Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bradley J. Burt, founder and student disabled veteran currently attending the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. This semester, I was tasked with a mission to profile the story about Senate Bill 602. Today, behind me, you see members of the Joint Finance Committee. And I have some extremely disturbing news to share with all of you. You see, the 16 members of this committee felt it was appropriate to hyper-politicize the POW MIA issue. The members of the Joint Finance Committee ruled not to even bring Senate Bill 602 before the senators, who unanimously supported the bill. And last week, I turned in the news feature for my capstone for the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater Journalism 486 course. And in that, I just simply shared what the people that were interviewed talked about. And they talked about the viability of funding the UW MIA Recovery and Identification Project. And they were able to share with us a little secret about this whole entire operation at the UW Biotech Center. You see, the DPAA, which is the Department POW MIA accounting agency, is a federal issue. It's a federally governed agency that locates all 81,600 POW and MIA. However, Senate Bill 602, funded at the state level, would allow the University of Wisconsin Missing in Action Recovery and Identification Project the opportunity to begin deliberations with North Korea, to request an opportunity through the $360,000 worth of funding to elect to locate one of Wisconsin's MIA, First Lieutenant Jerome A. Volk. And upon interviewing both Jerry Volk and Charles Kinzitsky, who is the director of the University of Wisconsin Missing in Action Recovery and Identification Project, we came to realize that we needed to do a little more investigation. So an interview request went out to Department of Finance Secretary Peter Barca, who obliged, whose exact words were, "Somebody's playing politics here because we have a $2 billion budget surplus." So the question is, I'm here today standing before you at the doors of the Joint Committee on Finance. Which one of these 16 individuals is responsible for this decision? And who was the executive authority that thought it was a good idea to throw out a bill that would repatriate up to 3 Wisconsin MIAs? Now, I'm bringing this before you from more of a public relations standpoint, being the owner of the Outpost 422 brand, helping veterans like myself who are disabled enter into academia, into the journalism field, and partake in undergoing the development process that I went through with investigative journalism. It's how I've learned to channel and cope with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Hi, my name is Jerry Volk, and recently Senator Roger Roth introduced a bill in the state of Wisconsin State Senate Bill 602, and I would like to speak about that today and to thank Senator Roth for introducing that very important bill. I speak to you today as a family member of a Wisconsin MIA whose remains have never been repatriated. As a lifelong Wisconsin resident and UW-Madison alumni, I have a very personal connection to the bill that Roger Roth authored. I also have a very strong connection to the UW MIA project. I was named after my uncle, First Lieutenant Jerome A. Volk, who was killed in action while flying a low-level bombing mission in North Korea on November 7, 1951. Jerry was the first Air National Guard pilot from Wisconsin killed in the Korean conflict. And in 1956, Volk Field at Camp Douglas was dedicated in his honor, and in 2015, my Uncle Jerry was inducted into the Wisconsin National Guard Hall of Fame. Although this was a tremendous honor due to the fact that Lieutenant Volk's remains have never been repatriated, my family has not been able to find closure 70 years later. My father was his only sibling and actually dedicated his entire life to pursuing the efforts to bring his brother home. Tragically, he was not able to see it happen before he died in 2016. The fact that Jerry has never been returned has taken a tremendous toll on our entire family in more ways than I have time to elaborate on here today. It is very complicated, very emotional, and runs very deep through many generations. To think about the collective anguish felt by the 1,500 Wisconsin families with missing dead is beyond my capability to describe in words. And yes, there are currently 1,500 Wisconsin residents who are still missing in action. It is my hope that one day my uncle can be brought home and laid to rest in the cemetery at Volk Field. Over the years, my dad and I attended many annual Department of Defense, POW, and MIA briefings in Washington, D.C., and kept up with all the efforts being made to bring the MIAs home from Korea. The news was never good, and in all honesty, with so many years having passed, I had very little hope that it would ever happen until recently. At the most recent briefing we attended, everything seemed to change. And I found out that because of great advances in science and technology, that they have made what was once impossible now actually possible. Experts today can positively identify remains with much less DNA than ever before, and this combined with other improvements is a game changer to increase the likelihood of bringing our MIAs home. That said, with over 80,000 Americans still unaccounted for, the task facing the DPAA is daunting and will likely never be completed. There simply is not enough time and money at the federal level to bring home 80,000 missing service people. It is also important to note that federal agencies such as the Department of Defense are limited as to where they can go due to fragile and at times non-existent diplomatic relations with countries such as North Korea and China. With the growing tensions between the United States and these countries, those areas will likely be off limits until the foreseeable future. Access to these countries has thus far been the biggest impediment to bringing home our fallen heroes, and because organizations at the state level like the UW MIA project have access that federal agencies do not have, they in fact might be our only hope to ever reach our fallen in those areas. The good news is that at our state we have a top-rated academic institution with ready volunteers in all areas of expertise required to successfully identify and repatriate the Wisconsin missing. The UW project is agile and does not have the inefficiencies of a huge federal agency. They simply can be more effective while incurring less expense, and who isn't looking for that today? It is imperative because of these factors that funding be provided so Wisconsin can be the first in the nation to find and return its missing heroes. The time is now. Between delays in passing this bill when it was first introduced in 2019, along with the literal halt that COVID brought to this project, many family members waiting for closure in the recent years, and the return of loved ones have either passed away or completely given up hope without ever being able to say goodbye. Time is running out and more are dying each day. The funding in this bill would serve to honor those that have given the ultimate sacrifice, honor their families and loved ones by bringing closure, and honor and inspire our current and future service personnel and veterans by giving credibility to the commitment that we make as a country. No soldier is left behind. We are currently witnessing what I believe to be a true travesty. The debacle that just happened in Afghanistan, other things happening on the world stage, and we cannot let this continue. Wisconsin is better than that, and we need to bring home our fallen. Our heroes deserve nothing less.
I will never forget the POW MIA because they've done so much for me. They've done so much for everyone else, and you cannot forget them. They've just done so much for everyone, and it's important that we remember and honor them and their families for serving our country.
What can be viewed? The prisoner of war missing in action dedication chair at the Wisconsin State Capitol. What can be heard? There's a tour going on. There are people filling the hallways with oohs and ahs about how great our Wisconsin State Capitol is. But what can't be unseen is the ongoing grief that families suffer who have loved ones still left abroad. I'm Bradley J. Burt. I'm reporting at the Wisconsin State Capitol for the capstone at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. We are here today to investigate Senate Bill 602, which seeks to fund $180,000 per year, per session, to the University of Wisconsin Missing in Action Recovery and Identification Project. What we seek is to understand the importance of why we must fund returning our Wisconsin service members home. And what we will find is that our public officials, the senators who introduced this bill, care that much that they seek to pass a bill that would appropriate $360,000 to the University of Wisconsin-Madison Biotech Center. On February 22nd, Senator Roger Roth shared his passion for the bill he continues to bring before public hearing at the Wisconsin State Capitol. The bill speaks of a family dynamic like no other.
Senate Bill 602 is our bill for the MIA Recovery Project, and it's to, for the first time, offer financial support to the UW system for the UW MIA Recovery Identification Project. It's never had state funding before. It's never had federal funding before. It relies entirely on donations from individuals, and then the university has been very supportive too in giving office space and staffing who work, kind of wear two hats, if you will, a lot of student volunteers and so forth.
Roth seeks recognition of the efforts of the University of Wisconsin Missing in Action Recovery and Identification Project at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Roth has spent the last 2 sessions seeking public support through Senate Bill 446 and 602, acknowledging the POW MIA issue of repatriating remains and bringing closure to families.
When they retell the story of the pain that the family went through, you can just see in their faces that just having the closure and just knowing what happened, it closes the loop. And that's what this bill is about, helping out these families. There are 82,000 MIA KIA since World War II. 1,500 in the whole United States. 1,500 from Wisconsin. 40 from my Senate district here in the Fox Valley. That's 40 families.
By March 15th, the news broke through the POW MIA community that the words spoke at Roth's hearing by Wisconsin Air National Guard Volk namesake Jerry Volk Berry, that her words had no lasting impact on the decision for the passage of the bill.
You know, this has kind of gone through the ebb and flows of politics, and this bill's not going to pass this session, and it breaks my heart. So, for probably a variety of reasons. But we've introduced it now twice. There are, we've had generated a lot of media coverage on it. There are discussions happening all over the state centered on this. It's not all for naught.
Despite bringing closure to families and assisting student veterans with a program called Boots on the Ground, which helps them prepare for college.
But I'll tell you, it isn't the state of Wisconsin's responsibility per se. This is a federal issue. These service members, when they deploy in defense of the nation. There is, the federal government, however, is steeped as it is in bureaucracy and red tape. They're failing at this. So DPAA, which is charged with doing exactly this, going out and identifying and finding the remains of service members and bringing them home, they have a $130 million a year budget. $130 million. And I will tell you, from all the stories that I've heard from families and even from our congressional delegation, everybody knows that it is a mess out there, but nobody's been able to fix this. So while we're waiting for this to get fixed, I think it's wholly appropriate that the state of Wisconsin invests $180,000 a year.
The mess Roth speaks of, for example, marks the 70th year the Volk family has waited for the return of their loved one, who is represented by Roth. His niece shares her testimony about the experience.
It's so valid to spend the resources that we can, and why we desperately need these resources to bring home these fallen service members, because until you've been through it as a family member, I really cannot emphasize strongly enough that no one should underestimate the pain of not having closure.
Closure, spoke of by Volk's niece, shares a story of a young man who grew up at Volk Field, who later became acquainted with the Volk family. The family's support drives Charles Kuznitsky's grassroots mission. The family believes his program will bring their loved one home.
When I started the project, in 2015, we started working on cases, and a family member approached us by the name of Jerry Volk Berry. Exceptional individual, kind of a family member now. But that was that aha moment when she informed me that Jerome Volk was her uncle and missing. And that, knowing, my childhood of being on that base and not knowing that that was named after a missing airman, it was the you're on the right path moment.
Kuznitsky's role as the director surveys crash sites for cold case investigation. The project converges a spectrum of resources, like a search dog mission mixed with artificial intelligence data collection, and a method of volunteerism while studying abroad. The mission breathes academic undertones.
When I talk about these academic backgrounds, the other thing that you're looking at is they're actually inspiring families. They're giving some type of closure for these individuals. So it's absolutely rewarding. Don't get me wrong, everything is rewarding in an academic environment. But we're working on field recovery. We're working on AI, machine learning. We're working in the field of anthropology, archaeology, biology, i.e. we're working with environmental DNA, ancient DNA. We're bringing these new technologies into the tool set of recovery.
Kuznetsky's War Room displays archive from World War II, whose program has noted 2 of the Rosetta Stones at the Ardennes Cemetery in Belgium, which represents those who are missing, placed at their monument, represents 2 of the missing his program brought home. The Rosetta Stones at the cemetery monument are the accolades of the program.
It's been pretty interesting research thus far. It's a crew that went down over what was at the time Germany, but is now Poland, and it's a pretty hot case at the moment. There's a lot of stuff flying around, and I've gotten to read a lot of different articles and information that's been sent my way from people within this group itself. It's been incredible thus far. I think that's the best way to put it.
As for the 1,500 Wisconsin families Roth spoke of during interview, their strife and hope will have to wait another session. Meanwhile, volunteers and students like Yang keep putting in work despite the bill's outcome.
So it really gives everyone a very wide understanding of impact academically, because we don't discriminate against an individual just because they have a history background that they should be doing history. No, I want them in the field to understand the reason why it's important to perform history. And then on the biological side, we want those anthropologists and archaeologists to understand why it's important, so they will see and learn the reasons for that as well. So when we are working on a case, not just in the suite here or in the field, we make sure that those individuals have a flavor of every single one of those steps.
The investigation concludes Department POW MIA Accounting Agency's $130 million does not fund a working project with a proven track record. The Volk family believes Kuznetsky's program is a game changer.
But definitely the grief was so raw and the anger was so raw, and the lack of closure leaves all those emotions hanging open and doesn't ever let a family get to a resolution, that I think it affected the relationship that my dad had with his own parents after Jerry was killed. It affected my dad's sense of guilt and the burden he lived with, knowing that he did not have to take on the danger and make the sacrifice that his brother did. And he lost a brother. So he spent the rest of his life, as far as I can remember, searching for his brother.
As our interview came to a close, Kuznetsky and Volk Berry exchanged archive. Kuznetsky revealed to the Volk family of the cold case file his organization has started and the Bible-sized binder of their collection. His t-shirt featured represents the emblem of a World War II squadron.
So, whether you're a veteran or not, we all believe that we owe our whole existence to the fact that in this crazy world that we live in right now, and we just found out this week with Russia invading Ukraine, that this is how the world is. Bad people doing bad things. And we need to be a country that stands for something. We need to have men and women, which we do, willing to enlist and join our military to serve and defend our way of life. And our commitment to those men and women when they join and go downrange to fight for us, and some who die, our commitment to them is that they know that they will not be left behind or forgotten. And one of the ways that we can make that commitment to this next generation of Americans, which will be taking up arms, which will have to meet the threats coming from Russia and China, is to do everything we can to bring the men and women who have defended our country in past wars, to bring them home.
Oh, the restrooms, yeah. And I know the girls will take forever because... Sure. Well, there's only like 3 or 4 open?
Because we went up and we tried opening the door, so.
And you actually got to the door?
Well, you know those like two doors side by side?
I've only been up there once.
We used the elevator and then we went up the stairs, we tried to open it.
On the fifth?
Yeah, because the elevator goes to the fourth and then we took a flight up to the fifth and we weren't able to open it.
I think it's one of these two layers.
It is, but we weren't able.
So with the I Will Not Forget campaign, with the $2.5 million being asked, 60% of that money will go to the UW MIA Recovery and Identification Project. Over $1 million is seeking to be allocated to that program so that they can put that money where it needs to be. So they don't have to keep coming back and getting sent back out the door by these people. Because we, the people, can help them. And so in closing, with my findings, I will continue to move forward with the I Will Not Forget campaign, figuring out which of these 16 individuals thought it was appropriate to throw that bill in the garbage and get to the bottom and get to the brass tacks of what's going on with our legislators, with our elected officials, who are public servants, mind you. They serve the public people, the greater good. They don't have power and control over us. We are the ones that decide who gets elected. And let's keep moving the momentum forward to bring funding to the UW MIA Recovery and Identification Project. Because quite frankly, for them to throw this bill in the garbage speaks a lot about the volume of our Joint Finance Committee.